Whether you wanted it or not, you've stepped into Destiny 2 and you're about to get overwhelmed by things you don't understand. You need to understand all of these things in order to play this game. It is a lot, but don't worry. I've played this game for thousands of hours, and today I'm going to teach you the essential things every player needs to know. Yes, this is a long video, but trust me, it is worth it. If you're a new or returning player, this guide will transform you into a knowledgeable player who fundamentally understands how to play this game. Destiny is incredibly confusing when you don't have a lot of experience, but this video will teach you exactly how to punch through that confusion and eventually take on Destiny's best and most rewarding content. This video contains many chapters, and I designed it this way so that you can come back in the future and re-watch a specific chapter as a refresher. So from now on, treat this video as your ultimate guide to the Destiny universe. If you're ever confused about something, come reference this video and it will have the answer. So without further ado, let's get into it and take out these confusing topics, one by one. Choosing your class is an important decision, and it will have a big impact on how you experience the game. The three classes are Hunters, Titans, and Warlocks. Hunters are the agile rogue-like characters. Their class ability is a dodge, and there are various types of dodges that can provide you with different benefits. For example, some dodges will reload your weapons or recharge your melee ability. Titans are more tanky and melee focused, but they don't actually have more health like tanks in a traditional MMO. All classes in this game actually have identical base stats, but the Titan class does have some abilities that help them embrace the tanky protector identity. For example, their class ability allows them to deploy a protective shield that can sometimes provide their teammates with certain buffs. The final class is Warlocks, and they are like wizards with an emphasis on space magic. Their class ability lets them place down a rift on the ground to either buff their damage or heal them slowly over time. Their teammates can also stand in the rift to receive these benefits, making Warlocks extra helpful for group-based content. When considering which class might be best for you, it's important to take a look at the abilities and offerings that each one brings to the table. Each class also has a number of subclass options. These subclasses have elements tied to them. The light elements are Solar, Void, and Arc, and the darkness elements are Strand and Stasis. Subclasses determine your abilities like your grenades, melee, and your super. Your super is like an ult in other games, and it is the most powerful ability you have as a guardian. Here's a quick rundown on all of the options you have on each class. For the Agile Hunter class, the Solar subclass is called Gunslinger. Gunslingers have the Blade Barrage super, which hurls a wave of solar-charged explosive knives, and two golden gun options called Deadshot and Marksman that trade uptime for raw damage. Void Hunters are the Nightstalker subclass. Nightstalkers can use the Spectral Blade super that turns you into a shadow figure sweeping across the battlefield with deadly knives. They also have two Shadow Shot options that can tether enemies to the ground, allowing you to deal increased damage while they are trapped. For Arc, there is the Arc Strider subclass. They can use the Gathering Storm, which allows you to throw an arc staff into an enemy or environment, causing major damage and then pulsing to do additional damage to anything nearby. There is also Arc Staff that allows you to wield the staff like a lightsaber, swinging it around to defeat enemies. The final Arc super is called Storm's Edge. You can repeatedly throw an arc knife into the distance and then instantly teleport to it and deal a massive amount of damage to anything nearby. Our first Darkness Hunter subclass is called Revenant, and it uses the Stasis element. The Silence and Squall super allows you to release an icy tornado that freezes and damages targets. For Strand, we have Threadrunner, which gives you a giant rope dart you can use to swing around and damage enemies like a whip, and it gives you unlimited grapple for fast movement. All classes have access to the Strand grapple, but the Hunters can use it far more often than Titans or Warlocks. Now moving over to Titans, their supers tend to reflect their more tanky and melee-focused identity. For Solar, you have Sunbreaker. It will provide you with two supers. Hammer of Soul lets you throw a bunch of explosive hammers through the air to destroy enemies, and Burning Maul lets you wield a massive flaming hammer that you can swing around in circles or slam into the ground to create flaming cyclones. For Void, you have Sentinel, and the primary super called Sentinel Shield allows you to throw your shield and smash it into your opponents. Sentinels also have Ward of Dawn, where you can create a protective bubble that also buffs weapon damage after you leave it. The final Void super is called Twilight Arsenal, and it lets you hurl 3 massive Void axes into the distance to deal area damage. Afterward, you and your allies can also go pick up these axes and then wield them against your enemies. Arc Titans are called Strikers, and they come equipped with two variations of a big slam super. The first is called Fist of Havoc, and it allows you to repeatedly slam the ground and leave arc shockwaves in your wake. The second is called Thunder Crash, and it lets you fly through the air like a missile and cause massive damage to whatever you impact. For Stasis, you have Behemoth, which features the Glacial Quake super. You get a giant icy fist that lets you create stasis shockwaves and freeze targets, and then you can smash into them to destroy them. For Strand, you have Berserker and its Blade Fury super. Your arms become equipped with two massive blades that you can use to slash enemies for damage, and you can also unleash Strand waves to suspend distant enemies in the air. The Magical Warlock class has a variety of offerings, but they're a bit less intuitive than the other classes. Solar Warlocks are called Dawnblades, and their first super, Daybreak, allows you to rapidly fly through the air with a sword that unleashes fiery projectiles. Song of Flame is a rare first-person super that buffs you and your allies, and essentially just makes your weapons and abilities exceptionally powerful for a short time. They also have Well of Radiance, which is less flashy but extremely powerful. This creates a solar well on the ground that constantly heals you while also allowing you to deal increased damage to enemies. This will also benefit your entire fireteam, so this is extremely useful in group content such as raids. The Voidwalkers have two versions of a super called Nova Bomb, which both let you throw a massive void ball at enemies to cause major damage. They also have Nova Warp, which allows you to constantly teleport short distances and create explosions everywhere you go. Arc Warlocks are called Stormcallers. Here you have Chaos Reach, which allows you to unleash a large beam of energy for a sustained period of time. They also have Storm Trance, which allows you to float through the environment, zapping everyone with chain lightning from your fingertips. The Stasis Shadebinder has Winter's Wrath, which gives you an icy staff that unleashes stasis shards to freeze targets, and then you can unleash a shockwave that destroys them. Lastly, the Strand Warlocks are called Broodweavers, and their Needlestorm super throws a barrage of needles at opponents and summons an army of threadling creatures to seek out any remaining enemies. With the release of the final shape, Destiny introduced the very unique Prismatic Subclasses. These allow Guardians to wield both light and darkness abilities at the same time, and mix all of the different elements together. Each class can choose from a select number of supers that we already mentioned, as well as a selection of different abilities from across the different element types. This is a huge departure from the past where you were always limited to just one damage type, and this now gives a lot more creativity to your builds. The Prismatic subclass also brings a new super-like ability called Transcendence. To charge up Transcendence, you need to use both light and darkness abilities, or deal damage with light and darkness weapons to fill up these meters. Once both light and dark are charged up, you can then activate Transcendence to immediately recharge all of your abilities and allow them to recharge much faster. You also deal increased weapon damage and have increased damage resistance. While Transcendent, you gain a very powerful class-specific grenade that can deal 2 different damage types at once. You unlock these new subclasses as part of the Final Shape campaign, and you can open up more abilities, aspects, and fragments over time as you complete missions, quests, and find hidden collectibles. These abilities function based on verbs, and these verbs each have different effects. They are often impacted by these modifiers right here called fragments, and the overall verbs have a huge impact on gameplay. Here's a brief overview of the verbs on each element because they will inform you about which subclasses you ultimately want to play. Starting with Solar, this gives you a great mix of both healing and offensive capabilities. This can be demonstrated with a healing grenade because it triggers our first 2 verbs called Restoration and Cure. These are the primary healing verbs in the Solar subclasses. Restoration allows you to regenerate your health and shields over time, and your Guardian will continue to heal until the buff wears off, even if you are taking damage. The grenade also grants Cure, which can give you a nice initial boost of health, and this can often save your life in dicey situations. The other Solar grenades can demonstrate the offensive verbs called Scorch and Ignition. When Scorch is applied, it causes enemies to take damage over time. As an enemy receives multiple stacks of Scorch, they will begin to take more and more damage. If they receive enough Scorch stacks, they will eventually ignite. Ignition is a large solar explosion that will deal damage to any surrounding enemies. This is also one way that champions can be stunned. Champions are powerful enemies that can only be countered by certain weapons and abilities, and we talk about this in depth later in the video. For now though, it's notable that certain subclass verbs can stun champions without the use of a weapon. Radiant is another solar verb that causes your weapons to deal increased damage to enemy combatants. A good way to trigger this is by using the Ember of Torches fragment on your subclass page, which will give you Radiant when you use a charged melee. Radiance can also help you stun barrier champions. Finally, solar subclasses create an orb object called a Fire Sprite. These can be picked up from the battlefield and they provide grenade energy. However, there are a number of fragments that give additional functionality to these. Many allow for the creation of Fire Sprites, but Ember of Mercy is nice because it will grant you restoration whenever you pick one up. Void subclasses have quite a few verbs that work together to help debuff targets, as well as promote survivability with healing, shields, and stealth. Let's start off with the debuff verbs. Volatile is a really fun verb that makes targets unstable to the point where they will explode in fantastic fashion. Certain fragments like Echo of Instability can grant your weapons volatile rounds after getting grenade kills. These rounds can then be used to make enemies volatile. This can also pierce the shields of barrier champions, stunning them in the process. Weaken does basically what its name says, and it causes targets to take increased damage. It does, however, have the additional benefit of slowing their movement speed, as well as reducing the accuracy of combatants' weapons. The Echo of Undermining fragment can give all of your Void grenades this ability. The final debuff verb is Suppression, which makes it impossible for enemies to use any ability or movement modes, or even fire their weapons while the effects last. Suppression can also be used to stun Overload champions. The survivability verbs include Devour, Overshield, and Invisibility. Invisibility is just what it sounds like. Your Guardian becomes invisible for some time, but you lose the invisibility when you take any sort of offensive action like firing your weapon. This makes you completely invisible to enemy combatants, but other players will still be able to see you if they look closely. Overshields give you further protection by not only increasing your health pool, but also by reducing the amount of damage you receive. The most interesting of these verbs, however, is probably Devour. Once activated, Devour will restore your health and grant grenade energy whenever you deal a final blow. The timer is short, but if you defeat subsequent enemies before the timer expires, you can proc Devour again and restart the timer. Similar to Solar Fire Sprites, Void has an item called Void Breach. These serve a similar function, but instead of giving grenade energy, these grant you class ability energy when picked up. The last of the light elements is Arc, and while there aren't as many verbs here, they do provide some unique functionality such as buffing your movement. You can become Amplified by defeating targets rapidly with Arc damage. When Amplified is active, you not only receive an initial movement speed buff, but after sprinting for a short time, you can actually start going even faster as you zoom throughout the battlefield while also having increased weapon handling. The developers basically said they made Amplified Guardians go as fast as the running animation can possibly go, so you really get to move at incredible speeds. The Spark of Shock fragment gives all arc grenades the ability to jolt targets. When jolted, enemies take additional damage and can even chain lightning to other surrounding targets. Jolt can also be used to stun Overload champions. Blind is another arc verb that disorients enemy combatants and makes it so they cannot fire their weapons. If you're fighting against other Guardians, their HUD is removed and their vision obscured. Blind can also stun unstoppable champions. The arc item that can be picked up is the Ionic Trace, but unlike the others talked about so far, these will actually move along the ground towards you. Once picked up, they give you ability energy. The first of the darkness elemental types is Stasis, and it is focused around exerting control over your enemies. The first and less severe of these verbs is Slow. Easily activated by Duskfield grenades, Slow gives targets reduced movement speed and ability regeneration. Weapon performance is also reduced, and it is harder to fire them accurately. Slow will stack up over time, and if a target receives enough stacks, they will become frozen. Slow can also stun Overload champions. The freeze verb is also pretty self-explanatory because it freezes targets and makes them unable to move. Enemy combatants also receive increased damage when in this very vulnerable state. If left alone, they will eventually break free, but before that happens, you will want to trigger the final verb called Shatter. When an enemy is shattered, they not only take damage, but also damage any other nearby target. The Shatter effect can also stun unstoppable champions. The Stasis item is aptly called a Stasis Crystal. When these are created, they will freeze any nearby combatant and slow any nearby players. These can also be destroyed and cause damage to anything nearby. There's also Stasis Shards, and these little guys will give you melee energy when you pick them up. The final darkness subclass is Strand, and it makes heavy use of its item called the Tangle. Unlike the other items, these can actually be held once picked up, and they can be thrown at targets to cause damage. These play a large part in the elemental damage type, and other guardians often get upset if you steal their tangles. The simplest way to create them is to defeat any target that is subjected to any strand debuff. The 3 strand debuff verbs are Suspend, Unravel, and Sever. In addition to creating tangles when defeating enemies, Suspend will tie up any target and lift them off the ground for a short duration. While suspended, combatants cannot move or fire their weapons. Unstoppable champions become stunned, but all champion types become incapacitated for some time. Guardians can at least fire their weapons back while they are suspended, but they only have the ability to hip fire while in third person, which is not an easy task. Unravel causes enemies to take increased damage. As they take damage, they will also create unraveled projectiles that can seek out any nearby targets. The final debuff that can create tangles is Sever. Any enemies that are severed have their outgoing damage significantly reduced. There are also additional verbs associated with Strand, and they are called Woven Mail and Threadlings. Woven Mail gives you a very significant amount of incoming damage resistance to help you survive. There are a few different ways to create threadlings, but these are like tiny little creatures that will crawl over surfaces towards enemy targets, eventually causing damage when they attack. This may seem like a lot of information, and it is, but hopefully this last section can give you at least a basic understanding of the different subclass verbs and how they interact with each other. Hunters, Warlocks, and Titans all have different ways they can engage with these verbs, and some are more powerful on certain classes. Overall, just play around with your subclass tree and try to select different aspects and fragments that center around the verbs you want to use. Although many people have a main class, most players will eventually create all 3 classes on their account and experiment with them over time. You might start out as a Titan, but then in 6 months you could realize that being a Warlock was actually your true calling. It's always good to experiment and play all 3 to make sure that you're having a balanced experience and trying out everything the game has to offer. After you select a class, you'll start the game by playing through a few simple missions in the Cosmodrome guided by Shah Han. This tutorial will likely take you between 2 and 4 hours, and then afterward you'll acquire your ship and head off to explore the vast Destiny universe. After the first couple missions of the tutorial, you will have this option to skip the rest of the section and go directly to the tower and receive a new light kit from Ikora. This is a great option if you have a friend showing you the ropes and you just want to get into playing the game, but if you don't have a friend, I definitely recommend finishing the New Light tutorial before moving on. You can still pick up the New Light kit from Ikora when you are finished. This tends to be where people get super overwhelmed because there are just so many things to do and there's really no direction on what stuff is important for new players. The game unfortunately doesn't emphasize it enough, but the solution here is that you will want to follow the objectives in a system called Guardian Ranks. When you're in orbit, you can hit this button to access your Journey tab, and this is where you will see your Guardian rank. This is basically a checklist of things to do that will get progressively more challenging as time goes on. At first, these objectives are very simple things like go visit a certain planet or complete a public event. These tasks will help you familiarize yourself with the various different parts of the game, so I highly recommend that you focus on Guardian ranks until you get to rank 6. Guardian ranks are also incredibly important because they unlock additional features like mods, triumphs, fragments, and titles. If you only take away one thing from this video, it should be to do what the Guardian rank objectives say. They are super important for new players, and they will absolutely help you learn the basics. Since there are a lot of different systems in this game, there are also a lot of menus. These menus are extremely confusing for new players, so we've dedicated an entire section of this video to breaking them down so that you can navigate the game with ease. Along the way, I'll explain the important functionality of each menu because this is the absolute bread and butter of this game. If you don't understand the menus and all of their tabs, you will find yourself very lost and confused. The first main menu is called the Director. This menu has a number of tabs that direct you on where to go and what to do on your journey. The Destinations tab is basically a big map of the current Destiny universe, and you can select a location in order to travel there. In some locations, you need to select a landing zone in order to launch your flight. For example, there are planets like Neptune, and there are also social spaces like the Tower or the Helm, but we'll talk more about those later. There are also activities displayed here in the Director. Vanguard is where you'll find strikes and other 3-player missions. During these missions, you'll fight against various enemies and eventually defeat some kind of boss at the end. These are a step up from the regular story missions, but the basic playlist called Vanguard Ops is still very beginner friendly. Next up, there is Gambit. This is a mode where two teams race to see who can defeat the enemies faster, and players can also occasionally invade the other team to mess them up. This is kind of a blend between fighting enemies in PvE and fighting players in PvP. Speaking of which, the Crucible is home to Destiny's player versus player activities, where players compete in a variety of different modes. There is a relatively steep learning curve to Destiny's PvP, but if you practice enough to get the hang of it, PvP can be some of the most fun and replayable content in the entire game. Pathfinder is a system implemented for the Pale Heart destination, as well as the ritual activities of Strikes, Crucible, Gambit, and Onslaught. Pathfinder basically combines patrols, bounties, and weekly ritual challenges into a single system that gives you more choices in how you want to earn your loot. The system has 5 levels that you need to progress through in order to receive the final reward. You have quite a few choices on what activities and objectives you would like to complete in the earlier levels, but you have fewer options on the later ones. Once you have charted your path to the end and unlocked your reward, you can then reset the Pathfinder and go again. The rewards will decrease over time, but every week it resets to maximum rewards, and it is a good farmable way to receive loot and materials. When you are located in one of these destinations, you can also pull up the Map tab. This will tell you a bit about the environment you are exploring. It will highlight different activities that can be completed at your destination, like lost sectors and public events. Lost sectors are hidden areas on planets where you can defeat enemies and claim a chest of loot. They are clearly marked with this symbol, and you can see this symbol on your map and also in the game. Public events are random activities that appear while you're patrolling around on any planet. These events only take a few minutes and have a specific objective for you to accomplish. Importantly, if you do a certain hidden objective during an event, you can turn it into a heroic public event in order to get more rewards. I'm not going to explain all of the heroic events here because that would take an eternity, but you can easily Google the heroic objective for any specific event in just a few seconds. The next menu that you'll need to know is the Quest tab. In this tab, you can view your current quests and bounties. Bounties are short, objective-based tasks that reward you with experience and resources. These can be picked up from vendors, which we will cover a bit later. Quests are longer, multi-step tasks that sometimes require playing more challenging activities and can involve puzzle solving. Every quest is different, but some of them can reward some very valuable loot. When you pick up a quest you want to do, you can select it in order to track it. This little green icon will appear, and then when you go back to the director, the same green icon will guide you and tell you where you need to travel in order to work on the quest. To make it even easier though, you can just open up the quest details and launch the quest straight from the menu. The Quest tab has a bunch of different tabs, but this top section will feature quests that the game thinks you should do next. If you're feeling lost as a new player, you can either do your Guardian ranks or complete some of these quests to get started. The Episode tab is where you'll slowly unlock rewards as you level up. Think of it like a battle pass from other games. This will give you bonuses, armor, weapons, and materials that you'll need along your journey. Like many games, there are 2 tracks, a free one with less rewards and a paid version that is more desirable. These episodes can either be purchased as a bundle with the most recent expansion or bought individually. Finally, the director also includes the Eververse store. This is where Destiny's microtransactions live, and the store operates based on the currency silver that is bought with real money. And if you're asking how to make money and how to earn this silver currency in-game, unfortunately, you cannot. However, there is another currency called Bright Dust which you can earn in-game. It is rewarded by completing challenges that can be found on both the episodes and quest tabs. Each week, there are a few offerings in the store that can be purchased with Bright Dust, but unfortunately most of the items will require you to open up your wallet and spend actual money. If you're willing to do that though, the store offers beautiful cosmetics that you can transmog onto your weapons and armor, and there are also emotes, shaders, finishers, and other things that generally are not pay to win. This tab on the far right is your Social tab. This is where your friends will appear, and then there is also this little inbox where you can accept invites to join someone's fireteam or clan. The great thing about Destiny is that it is cross-platform, so you can play with your friends if they are on PC, PlayStation, or Xbox. This is also where you can access the Fireteam Finder feature. Fireteam Finder is essentially an in-game tool that helps you find other players to complete group content. Not all activities in Destiny have matchmaking, so if you want to do more difficult activities like Grandmaster Nightfalls, raids, or dungeons, you will need to use the Fireteam Finder to team up with other players. Within Fireteam Finder, you can filter through nearly any activity in the game, and you can find groups that are maybe willing to take new players like yourself and teach you the ropes. Some groups require microphones, but some just keep it to the in-game text chat as well. Another benefit of teaming up with other players is that they can actually make you much more powerful. Thanks to a system called Fireteam Power, the game will boost you up to the power level of the highest guardian in your fireteam. So as long as your group has one player at a high level, everyone else will be brought up there too. This doesn't make leveling completely unimportant, and we will cover leveling later, but it's nice that you don't have to grind a lot before you can jump into the more demanding activities. If you don't want to use the Fireteam Finder in-game, there are also other options outside the game, like a massive Destiny 2 LFG on Discord with literally hundreds of thousands of players to match up with. That's all for this menu, but now we're moving on to the other main menu called the Start menu. This includes multiple tabs that can help you manage your Guardian, including your weapons, armor, inventory items, and other things like your achievements. This is the character screen. You'll spend a lot of time here customizing your Guardian and selecting which weapons and armor you want to use. You can also select which subclass you want to use, but if you're a brand new player, you probably don't have them all unlocked just yet. You will unlock and upgrade your light subclasses of Solar, Void, and Arc by visiting Ikora in the tower. Darkness subclasses like Stasis and Strand are unlocked by the campaigns and quests on Europa and Neomuna. Each subclass has different powers and abilities that you can customize in order to make a build and grow much more powerful as a player. On this screen, you'll be able to select which super, grenade, melee, class ability, and jump option you want to use. You can then pick some extra modifications called aspects and fragments in order to further enhance your subclass. You don't have to worry about this too much in the early days, but as you gain more experience, this opens up a lot of customizable options for your builds. Aspects and fragments are absolutely essential for making endgame builds, so you'll eventually want to learn about these so you can pick the best options. On the left and right, you can see your weapons and armor, which will come in different rarities. You will start out with white weapons and a full set of green uncommon armor. From that point on, basically all loot will be blue, also known as rare. Eventually, rare loot stops dropping and you will get purple legendary items. These will be your bread and butter items that you will use the most. Almost your entire loadout will involve purple legendaries, but there is also a special classification of gold exotic items. These are the rarest items and feature unique perks that can't be found anywhere else. Because these items can be extremely powerful, you can only have one exotic weapon and one exotic armor piece equipped at any moment. Destiny is well known for its unique weapons that feel absolutely amazing to use. There are thousands of them, and they come in a variety of different types. Some can just drop out in the wild, and others are earned by completing activities or quests. There are two main types of weapons called random rolls and craftables. Randomly rolled weapons drop with an assortment of random perks from a predetermined pool of possibilities. Later in the game, however, you can actually gain the ability to craft weapons and pick and choose which of the available perks you want to build onto your weapons. Craftable weapons are incredibly important for the endgame, so there's a section later in this video covering them in more detail. All weapons come in one of three different ammo types: primary, special, and heavy. Primary weapons have infinite ammo, and they include weapons like auto rifles, which are simply rifles that fire in a fully automatic mode. Scout rifles do more damage per shot than auto rifles, and are generally considered better at longer ranges. Pulse rifles aren't terribly different from scout rifles, but they actually fire in short bursts of 3 to 5 shots depending on the weapon. Hand cannons fire a single shot on each trigger pull and usually do pretty significant damage at decent range. Sidearms are sort of similar, but are much smaller, fire faster, and have reduced damage and range. Some machine guns are fully automatic like auto rifles, but they are meant for super close range and tend to fire more rapidly. Bows are the final primary weapon type, and as you might expect, they fire arrows at enemies. Special weapons do not have infinite ammo, so you'll need to pick up these green ammo bricks from the ground. This is because they are generally more powerful on a shot-for-shot basis than primary ammo weapons. Special weapon types include shotguns, and in Destiny they are only effective at extremely close range. Certain grenade launchers also use special ammo, and they fire off small explosive projectiles. Fusion rifles are sort of like a slow-firing, energy-powered shotgun that needs to be charged up to fire, but does a significant amount of damage. Sniper rifles are pretty standard long-range weapons. Trace rifles fire a constant beam of energy at enemies, and they tend to have massive magazines. Glaives are like spears that can fire projectiles, melee enemies, and also create a protective shield. Heavy weapons are the most powerful, and they use these rare purple ammo bricks. Weapon types that use heavy ammo include swords, drumfire grenade launchers, rocket launchers, linear fusions, and machine guns. Occasionally, you may find some of these weapon types using a different type of ammo than what they normally use. Usually these are on exotics and tend to be more powerful than the other weapons of that type. You'll notice on your character screen that there are 3 slots for you to equip different weapons. Your first thought might be that there is one for each ammo type, but that is actually not the case. The first 2 slots can be used for either primary or special ammo weapons. You can even use 2 of a single weapon type if you want. Overall, the slots are organized based on the type of damage that a weapon deals. The top slot can equip any kinetic, non-elemental weapon, as well as the darkness damage types of Stasis and Strand. The second slot is then used for the light damage types of Solar, Arc, and Void. The third slot is for heavy weapons, regardless of damage type. Below your heavy weapon, you can also see your ghost, which can be customized to give you different bonuses in your general gameplay. You can also equip a focus mod that makes it more likely for you to get a chosen stat on your armor. When considering mods, you also need to know about artifact mods. Your artifact contains these super fancy perks that can be unlocked as you earn experience in the current episode. They are fancy because, unlike regular mods, they do not need to be equipped. Once you unlock them, they are automatically applied to your character at all times for free. These perks can serve a few uses. Some are strong against champions, while others supercharge different weapon types, perks, or abilities. Some of them are incredibly powerful, and you'll definitely want to make use of them. They can have a significant impact on your build possibilities and ultimately define your loadout. You can only unlock a limited amount at a time, but don't worry, you can always refund these perks and choose different ones if you want to. The artifact also keeps track of a special part of your leveling, but we'll cover that when talking about leveling a bit later. Beneath your character screen, you'll find cosmetic options where you can select your ship, Sparrow and Skimmer, equip different emblems, and modify your transmog. Don't worry too much about cosmetics for now, but keep in mind that many players become obsessed with fashion when they get more into the game. One tip when you're ready to get started on this, don't feel like you need to buy transmog materials from the Eververse store. You can actually get free materials that can be earned by completing bounties for Ada 1 in the tower. These will reset after each episode. Once you dive into fashion and unlock more armor sets, you'll probably be spending a considerable amount of time exploring the thousands of amazing armor and shader combinations that Destiny has to offer. The Journey tab includes the essential Guardian rank system that we talked about earlier, but it also tracks other things. For example, you can see commendations that you've received from other Guardians and titles which appear under your name. Triumphs track basically everything you have ever done in the game, from the number of enemies you defeated to collectibles you found, as well as different secrets and objectives you have achieved. This is your Collections tab. Since Destiny has thousands of different weapons and armor pieces, the item section is where you'll want to keep track of which ones you have unlocked. Notably, exotics you have unlocked can be reacquired from the Collections tab at any time for a relatively low cost. Be careful though, each piece of exotic armor will drop with unique stats. If there's a piece you really value, it's worth chasing one with a high stat package. You also can't reacquire weapons that come with random rolls. The resources page shows you all of the different resources available in the game, including different currencies, upgrade modules, and engrams. It also explains how you can earn them and what they do, so this is a great place to learn. We will go over the most important ones in a little bit. Under Equipment, you can view and reclaim all of the different ghost shells, ships, and sparrows you've ever used. The Flare page shows some of the other cosmetics that you've earned. Here you'll find emblems that you can equip to show on your name card, shaders you can use to color your weapons and armor, transmat effects that can create a special spawning animation, finishers that can be used to instantly kill a low health combatant, and some other miscellaneous collectibles. Also on this page, you can view recently discovered items, different records of your achievements such as medals earned, weapon pattern and catalyst progress, lore books to read, and various stat trackers. On the very bottom, you have badges that provide a nice look at the checklist of everything to earn on various destinations and in various activities. The Clan tab is where you can view your clan members and your progress towards earning some extra loot through playing with clanmates. Your inventory is the place for all of your random materials and stuff that you pick up as you play. On the top right, you'll also see how much currency you have, and the main two you'll want to know are Glimmer and Engrams. Glimmer is the most basic currency in the game that is used for nearly all purchases, while Engrams are used to roll for gear at various vendors. You'll constantly get both of these currencies by just playing the game, but if you need more Glimmer, you can get it at the Cryptarch in exchange for phantasmal fragments from the moon. You can also equip the Glimmer Booster mod on your Ghost to help you earn that Glimmer more quickly. Engrams are extremely valuable, and they come in several different types. On this part of the inventory page, you can view your Prime Engrams, Exotic Engrams, and Eververse Engrams. You can hold up to 10 on your character at a time. These are the most special types of engrams that will give you special loot. Eververse engrams will give you different types of cosmetics from the Eververse store. Prime engrams are special engrams that give you powerful loot, so these are very helpful for leveling until you hit the hard power cap. Make sure to go to the tower as soon as you can after earning these and turn them in to this guy named Rahul. These will increase your power level and will help you make your next drop even more powerful. This has started a little joke in the community where people often say, "Oh, I got a prime engram, let's hit the tower," even when they are in the middle of a raid encounter. Please don't actually do that though, finish your raid encounter first. Exotic engrams are the most coveted engrams in the game as they give you rare exotic loot. Destiny has made it easier to earn these now, as you can get up to 3 each week guaranteed by participating in ritual playlist activities, which include the Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit. Once you have an engram, you can go to Rahul in the tower and he can decrypt it for free into an exotic weapon or armor piece. If there is a specific armor piece you want to go for though, you can actually focus for it as well. Rahul offers focus decoding, which will give you a random exotic armor piece from a certain release period. This is still pretty random, so precision decoding may be what you want to really play with. Let's say you want to get my favorite exotic, Dragon's Shadow. You can trade that engram along with 2 Ascendant Shards and a lot of Glimmer to pull it directly and have a guaranteed drop. You can get some pretty good stat rolls this way too. The inventory page also shows an engram tracker. This tracks all the different engrams you have used and not spent yet. There are different ones for the ritual activities, Vanguard Ops, Gambit, and Crucible, including separate ones for the special Crucible modes of Iron Banner and Trials of Osiris. It also tracks engrams for different vendors as well. Overall, these engrams are used when chasing legendary loot, and each activity has different pools of items that you can try and chase. Let's talk about leveling. Your power level is this number on all of your weapons and armor, and it steadily goes up as you play the game and get more loot. Your overall power level is displayed here on your character screen, and it is calculated based on the average of your equipped items. You also get a small bonus from your artifacts, and the more experience you earn, the more power your artifact will provide. Your gear score, however, will consistently change over time, and the level required to do certain activities can also change. In order to increase your power level, here's what you need to know. There are 3 stages to the gear leveling process called the soft cap, the hard cap, and finally, the pinnacle cap. These caps mark a progressive increased difficulty in the gear leveling process. Soft cap leveling is the easiest, and any given activity can increase your power. Even as a new player, if you bought the most recent expansion, I highly recommend you play the Legendary campaign, as it will automatically bring you all the way up to the soft cap. It will also get you a lot of resources like upgrade modules in the process. After you reach the soft cap, this is when you'll notice that the new loot you get is not always an upgrade. Once you reach the current soft cap, you'll only be able to go higher by completing activities that specifically drop powerful loot. During the grind to the powerful cap, you are more limited on how you can earn loot that will increase your gear score. Certain activities will give you a limited amount of either powerful or pinnacle gear. Generally, you can only do these once per character each week, and these reset on Tuesdays. While you are leveling to the power cap, keep a lookout on your map for any of these powerful or pinnacle gear activities. You can tell if an activity drops this loot by hovering over it and reading the type of loot it provides. Sources of powerful loot will also be highlighted on your director with these little icons. After doing powerfuls for a while, you will reach another plateau called the pinnacle cap. At this point, as you might imagine, the only way to increase your power further is by completing activities that drop pinnacle loot. Similar to powerful loot, these are also highlighted on your director. You have a much more limited option on activities that will give you pinnacle loot, so these last few levels can take quite a while to max out. Upgrade modules are the main material that lets you level up your existing gear through an extremely important process called Infusion. Unfortunately, the game never explains this system for new players at all, but it's essential to leveling and upgrading your best gear. For example, say you have a weapon that you really like, but it has a low power level compared to your other stuff. If you go right here, you can use an upgrade module to increase the power of the weapon you like by consuming another weapon that is a higher level. You should never delete a legendary or exotic weapon just because it isn't high level, and this is a trap that many new players fall into. Since you can always upgrade the level of your weapons and gear with Infusion, the things you should really care about are the perks and the stats on your items. As previously mentioned, one of the best ways to earn upgrade modules is by playing the legendary version of the campaigns. The Episodes tab also has some free ones for you to use. Once you've exhausted that supply, you can buy them from the gunsmith or 801 in the tower for enhancement cores or glimmer, or you can even use the bright dust currency in the Eververse store to buy an item called concentrated matter gems. These items give you a buff that will cause the next boss you kill to drop an upgrade module. However, you may prefer to save your bright dust for cosmetic items as it is a much more limited currency. An important thing to note while leveling is you don't need to equip your highest level gear in order to get higher level drops. You can even put your highest level gear in the vault. As long as you don't dismantle it, you'll continue to receive higher and higher level drops. You do, however, want to decrypt those prime engrams right away, as they don't count until you turn them into gear, and their power level is determined when they first drop. You don't need to give leveling much thought when leveling to the soft cap, but as you get into the powerful and pinnacle bands, there are a few things you can do to make your limited weekly drops more impactful. Something you really need to keep track of is the levels of each of your individual slots on your Guardian. If you have one item, say your heavy weapon for example, that is significantly lower than all of your other items, you really want to get that item up before you go on to the next powerful or pinnacle drop. This is because having that one low-level item will tank your overall power level and prevent you from getting something that is a significant upgrade for one of your other slots. There are some sources of loot that can give you drops that are right at your current power level, and that can sometimes be used to fill those lagging items and boost your power level before you do your next big activity. There aren't many of these drops during the power grind, and generally you want to look for non-powerful legendary loot. In the past, activities like Terminal Overload and Paraversal Halls, which came from Dares of Eternity, have filled this role. You can also pull items from your episode tab once you get to higher levels. Once you get into the pinnacle band though, any of the activities that give powerful loot will now give loot that is at your character's level. There are actually some good third-party tools that can help you optimize this leveling process. One of the best is the Destiny Recipes website. This website will monitor your power and suggest the right activities based on your level. That's the basics of leveling, but if you have plenty of time and want to optimize, the best way to level actually involves more than one character and all three classes. The reason this works is because the highest level weapons will actually count on all of your characters as you level. So if you level your first as high as you can, and then you switch over to your second, those higher level weapons will give your second character a nice head start before they even begin the leveling process. Depending on how much higher those weapons are, even +0 drops can increase your level and then get you even higher +0s to drop. As you get higher in level, you might have infused some weapons and armor to keep them at a high power level. In addition to Infusion though, there is another system that helps you upgrade the stats on your armor. There are 4 materials that are closely related to one another, and they all help improve your weapons and armor. They are Enhancement Cores, Enhancement Prisms, Ascendant Alloys, and Ascendant Shards. The primary purpose of these materials is used to increase the stats and utility of your existing weapons and armor. Enhancement Cores are the most basic material, and they can be used to level up randomly rolled weapons up to level 10 and armor up to level 7. For levels 8 and 9 on armor, you need to spend the more rare currency called Enhancement Prisms. To get your armor to level 10, you will need to spend Ascendant Shards, which can only be acquired from the game's most challenging activities. Once random rolled weapons and armor have reached level 10, they are considered masterworked and have the maximum stat bonus. Each level on a random rolled weapon will increase a single stat by 1 point. On armor, you will get +2 of every stat after you upgrade it to level 10. As a brand new player, you want to avoid masterworking anything to level 10 though, unless you're absolutely sure that you want to use it long term. Lastly, Ascendant Alloys are basically the crafted weapon equivalent of Ascendant Shards, and they are used as part of the crafting process that results in masterworked crafted weapons. There are a lot more items here, and we'll go over the most important ones in a little bit, but first let's head over to the primary social space and give you a tour. Welcome to the Tower. You'll be spending a lot of time here because this is home to many important vendors and gameplay systems. You land right here, and if you walk off to your left, you'll find the Postmaster. This is where lost items will go. For example, if you forgot to pick up some of your loot off the ground, it will be waiting for you here. However, be careful and don't let valuable items just sit in the Postmaster. There is a limited number of items that can be kept here, and your things will get deleted if you overflow the Postmaster with too much stuff. On the opposite side of the tower, this is the vault, and it is a huge storage space for all of your loot. When you get a piece of loot but don't want to use it for a while, this is where you'll want to store it. The vault can hold several hundred items at once, and this might seem like a lot, but as you become a more experienced player, you'll find that it fills up very quickly. There is a cool third-party tool called Destiny Item Manager, or DIM for short, to help you manage this. This website lets you view all of your items on your character, vault, postmaster, and inventory all at once. You can use this to easily transfer any item between any of these locations by simply dragging like this. This website can do all kinds of cool advanced things, so feel free to explore it later when you become a more advanced player. The tower is also home to vendors associated with the core playlist that I mentioned earlier. Shax runs the Crucible, Zavala handles the Vanguard operations, and Drifter is responsible for Gambit. You'll notice that each of these vendors have bounties and a selection of loot that can be acquired. There are other important vendors like the Gunsmith who will provide access to a nice selection of weapons. Ikora offers some special quests to unlock exotic armor pieces, and she also helps you unlock and upgrade various subclasses. I would highly recommend doing these things and upgrading your abilities as soon as possible. Above Ikora is Hawthorne. She is the clan steward and offers different bounties that can be completed with any of your clan members. She also sells raid banners that can give you full ammo and charged abilities before a raid encounter begins. The Annex has 801, who is the TRANSMOG vendor. This is where you can pick up bounties that give you materials that can be used in the TRANSMOG process. She has a small collection of other goods to sell as well. Now, on the far end of the tower is the legendary titan Saint 14. Saint 14 oversees the Trials of Osiris PvP event that takes place from Friday until the weekly reset on Tuesday. This is where you can pick up your card that allows you to participate, as well as associated bounties and loot for the challenging PvP activity. There are also special event vendors that will visit from time to time. For example, Saladin oversees the Iron Banner PvP event that happens about once a month, and Evil Avante visits during special holiday events. Now that you have a basic understanding of the menus and vendors, I want to introduce you to some Destiny acronyms and terminology you will need in order to communicate with other players. For example, a blueberry is a person who is not in your fire team, and they will show up as a blue dot on the radar. DPS means damage per second and is commonly referenced when calculating how good a weapon is in PvE, which means player versus environment. DPS is also sometimes used as a general term to describe a damage phase, even though it is really a misnomer. Kinetic refers to any weapon in this slot. This can be a little confusing because Stasis and Strand weapons also go in this slot, even though they're not kinetic. Energy refers to this weapon slot, and heavy or power refers to this weapon slot. LFG stands for looking for group, while LFM means looking for more. KWTD means know what to do and is commonly used by experienced players searching for other experienced players. ADS means aim down sights. Meta means most effective tactics available and is commonly used in discussions about the best weapons in the game. Activities can sometimes pick up acronyms too. GM is a common acronym for Grandmaster Nightfall, and raids and dungeons are often abbreviated as well, such as KF for King's Fall or VOG for Vault of Glass. After the introductory quest with Shah Han, you'll still have a number of free quests and activities to do, but you'll start to realize that a lot of content requires you to own expansions or episodes. Generally, if you're going to purchase expansions, it's a good idea to buy the latest ones because they will give you access to the most relevant and recent activities and story missions. Generally, my opinion is that you should try Destiny for free when you're brand new, and if you actually decide that you enjoy the game, that's when you should consider buying expansions. These will unlock so many new exotics and activities that you would not have access to as a free-to-play player, and if you're regularly playing the game, it is absolutely worth buying some of this content. Destiny 2 has many different types of activities, some paid and some not, so let's cover a brief overview of where you'll eventually spend most of your time as a Guardian. The lost sectors we mentioned earlier can be used for obtaining and farming exotic armor. Since the loot pool is so large, however, it can be difficult to farm for a specific armor piece. Raids are endgame 6-player PvE activities that require strategy and coordination. You should absolutely aspire to do a raid someday, even as a new player. Raids are the most impressive and massive things Destiny has to offer, and you will not truly understand what Destiny is all about until you have experienced a raid. Raids are also a fantastic source for some of the best loot in the game. Dungeons are other activities that are kind of like mini raids because they only allow 3 players and they are much faster to complete. Many advanced players like to complete dungeons solo, and sometimes even flawlessly without dying. You can earn special emblems like these if you complete these challenging achievements. Exotic missions give you an opportunity to unlock certain exotic weapons. These are some pretty engaging missions, the mechanics aren't quite as involved as dungeons, and most exotic missions can be done solo. There is a special rotator node that lets you play some of the older missions from Destiny's past. Each new episode in Destiny generally introduces at least one new activity to play. These activities are available for a limited time, so it's important to get the loot from these activities before they go away. There's also this timelines feature on the top right of the destinations map. This will let you replay some of the older missions and campaigns that are no longer in the game. I highly recommend that you study this timeline if you want to understand the narrative and overall story of Destiny so far. This can also be a great way to catch up if you've taken a break. After you've completed the most basic activities in Destiny, you're going to want to start caring about stats and mods. These have a massive impact on gameplay and will make your weapons and abilities feel drastically more powerful. Your stats can be viewed here on the character screen, and they each do different things. Mobility will increase your jump height and strafe speed, but notably it does not change your sprint speed. For hunters, this stat also lets you dodge more often. Resilience increases how much health you have, reduces the amount of flinch when getting hit, provides some damage resistance in PvE, and makes Titan barricades recharge faster. Recovery makes your health recover faster and also makes Warlock rifts regenerate faster. Discipline makes your grenades recharge faster, Intellect makes your super recharge faster, and Strength makes your melee recharge faster. You'll need to decide which stats you want to personally aim for when building your character, so make sure to look at the stats on your different armor pieces so that you can select your favorites. Stats in Destiny are divided into tiers, meaning that only multiples of 10 actually have an impact on your Guardian. So in other words, there is no difference between having 10 and 19 of a certain stat. You would need to get up to 20 in order for it to be better than 10. Additionally, you should know that stat points above 100 do absolutely nothing. As you advance towards the Destiny 2 endgame, optimizing your stats and getting armor with good rolls will become a priority. In general, anything above a total of 60 will be worth keeping when you're new, especially if it has high values of the stats you want. Anything above 65 is exceptional, with 68 being the highest possible base total before any mods or masterworks are applied. Exotics, however, can roll with up to 71 total stats, but these are incredibly rare, and I've only ever gotten a single 71 stat drop in all of my time playing Destiny. Mods will be applied to all of your armor and weapons. You can unlock most of them from leveling up your Guardian rank, but some of the more advanced ones come from special endgame activities like Grandmaster Nightfalls, Trials of Osiris, and Raids. They can give bonuses to stats and provide incredibly powerful and unique effects. Starting off with weapon mods, these are rather simple things that slightly enhance something about your weapon. For example, they can do things like increase the magazine size of your weapon or change how much damage it does against certain enemy types. Armor mods are a bit more complicated because they simply do more things and they can often synergize with one another. For example, one armor mod will charge up your character, and then another will spend that charge in order to boost one of your abilities. There are a ton of different mods to look through, and you can mess around on the different ones to find out which combos you like. Here's a simple build that you can use to help you get started. This isn't a comprehensive build, but it will help you with a little boost without spending a ton of valuable materials to level up your armor. It'll also give you a good idea of what a build actually looks like so that you can invent your own in the future. For legendary armor, you can level up anything to level 5 without spending anything other than Glimmer, so it doesn't hurt to at least level it up that far. Each mod has a specific cost, so you have to budget and make sure that it fits into your available armor level. For your helmet, I'd at least throw on a heavy ammo finder mod for the cost of 3. For the other two, it doesn't really matter, a minor armor stat mod is fine, but you can't go wrong with a kinetic siphon or even harmonic if your energy weapon matches your subclass damage type. For your arms, I'd probably go with a major resilience mod at a cost of 4 and a fastmaul mod for the last point. Resilience is very important in this game, and you see a huge reduction on damage taken at maximum resilience. Speaking of damage reduction, resistance mods are very useful for your chest. Concussive Dampener is great for reducing explosive damage you receive, but I would probably run Harmonic Resistance, which gives you a resistance to your current subclass type, and then slot in 2 other light damage types that don't match. So for example, if you are on Solar Hunter, I'd put Harmonic Resistance and then Arc and Void Resistance in the other 2 slots. Solar, Arc, and Void are the most common incoming damage types, and this way you don't have to worry much about any of them. For your legs, use 1 damage surge in the element type of your heavy weapon, so if you're using a Solar Rocket, put a Solar Surge. Once you masterwork your boots, it's important to run multiple of these for encounters like raid boss fights, but you won't have to worry about that for a while. For the other 2 slots, Recuperation and Better Already are great for helping you stay alive, but you could also opt for Ability, Grenade, and Melee cooldown bonuses instead. For your class item, I like to use Powerful Attraction and Time Dilation. These extend your armor charge ability, which in this case will give your heavy weapon extra damage when you pick up an Orb of Power. Again, don't worry too much about stats at this time, but gradually you'll get better and better ones. For a while, you'll be chasing things above 60 that have a lot of resilience, but eventually you'll look for 65 plus and eventually try to get all the splits to get as many categories up to a total of 100 without going over. Resilience, discipline, recovery, and to a lesser extent, intellect will probably be your focus, but depending on what specialized builds you may craft later on, other focuses may come into play. For example, resilience is not nearly as important for PvP because it doesn't actually provide any damage resistance against players. On my hunter, I run extremely low resilience but extremely high mobility in order to get my dodge back faster in PvP. Overall, just keep a lot of your loot and don't be afraid to store it in the vault because it has hundreds of slots and you can come back to pick it up later. Once you come up with a combo of armor and mods that you like, you'll want to create a loadout. You can access the loadouts menu like this on the left side of your character. This is an extremely useful system that lets you save what you currently have equipped so that you don't have to manually change your setup every time. You can change your mods, armor, weapons, and even subclasses to something else, but then you can return to your loadout that you have saved with a single click of a button. You can also save multiple different loadouts here so that you can easily swap between different builds that you will design for different activities. Crafted weapons are very special because instead of having to rely on luck to get a perfect randomly rolled weapon, you can actually pick and give the weapon the exact specific perks that you want. As you start to get into more endgame stuff, you'll find that weapon crafting is an incredibly important part of obtaining the most powerful weapons in the game. You can unlock the crafting system by doing the first couple missions in the Witch Queen campaign, and I would recommend doing this as soon as possible so that you can begin to get those red border weapons to drop. Not all weapons can be crafted, but common sources are from expansion-based activities, raids, and episode loot. In order to craft a weapon, you first need to collect a number of patterns, commonly called red borders. You need to extract these patterns by either deleting the weapon or going into the weapon details and extracting the pattern here. Once you have enough patterns, you can go to the Enclave on Mars and craft the weapon, but at first you will have a very limited perk selection. To unlock more perks, you need to level the weapon up. There are a few ways to do this, and the first one is just to use the weapon and it will level up over time. You can also level it up extremely fast by just spending resources on the weapon detail page. Be careful of spending too much resources though if you're still new to the game. Eventually, after you level it up for a while, you will unlock all of the perk options. You can then reshape the weapon with amazing perks, and you can spend extra resources like Ascendant Alloys to get fancy enhanced versions of your favorite perks. As you can imagine, having the best weapons with enhanced versions of the best perks is a recipe for some absolutely insane weapons. As you progress further into the game, some of the more advanced activities have a powerful enemy type called champions. There are three main types of champions. Barrier champions will put up a strong shield that you cannot penetrate with normal weapons. Unstoppable champions will continuously charge at you, and finally, overload champions will move fast and use a bunch of abilities. All of these champions are extremely difficult to defeat unless you can find a way to stun them. One way to do this is by using weapons that have anti-champion perks. The artifact has a number of perks that can enable an entire weapon type to counter these champions. Notably though, each weapon can only have one anti-champion perk at a time. For example, sometimes hand cannons have the ability to stun unstoppable champions, but only if you have this perk unlocked. Some exotics actually can counter champions intrinsically, such as Wishender that has the anti-barrier perk, and in these cases, the artifact will not impact these weapons. To stun a champion, simply fire your special anti-champion weapon at them, and then they will become immobile and take increased damage. It's important to then deal as much damage as you possibly can, because they won't stay stunned forever. Barrier and overload champions will even begin regenerating their health once they've become unstunned if you cannot finish them off in time. A good way to do this is, well, with a finisher ability. Finishers allow you to instantly eliminate any enemy that is low on health, so this is a great way to quickly take out a champion before they manage to recover all of their health. In addition to weapons, there are also some abilities that can counteract these champions as well. You can hover over the icons on your character screen to see what can stun them. For example, the Arc Blind effect is strong against unstoppable champions. In order to make this guide as complete as I possibly can, I asked my community of experienced Destiny players to answer the following question. If you could give one piece of advice to a new Destiny 2 player, what would it be? There were hundreds of replies, but I'm going to share some of the best and most helpful ones with you now. I hope that you find these insightful. This guy said, the best advice I could give is to find people to play with. Whether it be friends, family, or a clan, the game is infinitely better with friends. There's plenty of discords and clans to join too. There were about 100 more comments saying very similar things, and I absolutely agree. Destiny can be played solo, but it is common knowledge that this game is far more enjoyable when played with friends. Not everyone has friends that play this game though, so if you're looking to make some Destiny friends or if you just want help with the game, definitely join my Discord. Here's a link for you. This other guy said, use whatever you are comfortable with and find fun. It doesn't have to be the meta. And don't let people control what you use. I definitely agree, and although there are some best practices, you can still use whatever weapons you want and do whatever activities you think are fun. Another piece of advice I'd leave you with is to explore the game at your own pace and do it with the goal of finding something that you personally enjoy. Try out Gambit, Crucible, Dares of Eternity, Dungeons. Explore everything and find out the specific thing that you like doing. Finding the part of the game that you actually enjoy is the key to enjoying your time in the Destiny universe. There are well over 100 exotic weapons, so if you're a new player, you might be wondering which ones are actually good and worth using. Well, I actually have the perfect solution. I ranked every single exotic into a tier list based on their PvP performance in this video right here, and I recommend watching it now. Remember, you can always come back to this video as a refresher and use it as your ultimate ongoing guide to the Destiny universe. Good luck out there, Guardians. Thank you for watching and have a great day.